come from a business background. You went to IIT, and I guess at the time when you went to IIT, the trend was for either to go abroad, study more, or to get a job, preferably in a state-owned company.
Yeah.
Or of course, there will always be a bunch of people in many of the engineering
I was offered a great job for 700 rupees a month doing maintenance.
Yeah. So how did you, and how does it happen? Are entrepreneurs wired differently?
Entrepreneurs are definitely wired a little bit different. I have to say, more people want to be entrepreneurs than are entrepreneurs, but don't have the guts to do it. And I admire entrepreneurs with just the guts they have of trying new things and taking high-risk things. Let me tell you about that case because I think it's I'm going to make 2 points from your last question. First, I actually tried to start this while I was at IIT, not after I graduated. And I got depressed after they told me a phone connection would take 7 years. That was the waiting line for getting a phone connection in New Delhi in the early 1970s. And without a phone line, you can't do business. But it was a technology that Agricultural Institute in Nainital had developed. But my problem was the following. I always had too much to do in my life, even when I was 16. Right? I always felt I had way more interest than I had time for. And my mom would send me to go get milk every day, and I had to sit there and wait for the milkman to milk the cow because otherwise they had water in the milk. So I had to waste all this time going to the milkman, waiting for the milk, getting milk back. So I said, if you didn't have to refrigerate, here's the thing. Call that a problem, I called it an opportunity. So I always think of every problem as an opportunity. Do you look at things as glass half full or half empty? Most people look at it as half empty. I look at it as half full. And that's why I like to be an optimist about life. And by the way, it's a lot more fun to be an optimist. You live a much happier life if you're an optimist than a pessimist. So just for that, it's worth it. You can depress yourself just thinking about the problems. But if you sort of say, hey, I'll take one or two that I can do something about, pick the best one among the current set and go work on it, then you can be optimistic. And even if not optimistic, you can be motivated. And motivation is the other way to be happy. The second point I want to make is, and every time I have an audience like this comes up. Sometimes people are bold enough to ask the question, sometimes they're not. They sit back there and they say, if you're successful, you can call anybody, you can get investment, you're in a different position to do things than I am. That's why I'm not doing it. And I always say, no, that's an excuse. My first year at IIT, as a young teenager, I was looking, there was no computer science department at any IIT. Closest was electrical engineering, and they barely taught digital logic. NAND gates and OR gates was this elementary class, probably the most sophisticated. Otherwise, electrical engineering was about motors and motor controllers and things like that. And I was reading one of these magazines, and I couldn't afford magazines, so I'd go to Chandni Chowk in Delhi once a week and rent old magazines, Electronic Engineering Times. So even though I didn't have much resources, by a little effort, I could get access to magazines, I could read. And I got motivated when I read that Andy Grove and those guys who are Hungarian immigrants into Silicon Valley started Intel. I said, if they can do that, why can't I? And so that's where my dream of being an entrepreneur came. But equally importantly, when I was at IIT, I wanted to learn computer programming. I didn't complain that there was no computer programming, no computer science department, or even a computer programming course. I couldn't find one in there was one, I probably couldn't afford it. So I started a hobby club, the first hobby club doing computer programming at IIT. So all I'm saying is, and by the way, a couple of years later, with one professor, three of us started the biomedical engineering program at IIT. I didn't have any resources. I was just an undergraduate student, like any undergraduate student at any college. But instead of saying this isn't available, I asked the question, how can we make it available? And if it's not perfect, if it's a hobby club and we have to teach each other instead of having a teacher, fine, we'll live with that. It's not ideal. And there's lots of things that are not ideal in India, but you live with it and make progress despite that. So for those of you who say, I'm in a different position, I counteract that when I was in a position with no resources, no visibility, and nobody listened to me, I didn't know anybody who worked in a corporate company. Right? My father was in the Indian Army, I only knew Army people. I asked the question, what can I do as opposed to what can't I do? So it's a really important lesson for all of you to convince yourself not to be entrepreneurs or not to do bold and daring things.
Okay, I have lots more to ask Vinod, but
I know